Ooh,
And he was
I'm
raised
sorry.
by women,
Yeah.
his grandmother, his mother, and his aunt.
Yeah.
And he he took a blow for that. But really, what happened is his mother could not deal with the loss of her mother, his grandmother, and so she started to really not take care of herself. And they lived
They were
in the
out of
mid. Yeah,
state,
they were out
right?
of state,
Yeah.
and so we had to start going back and forth. She debilitated so much health wise that we had to hire someone to be in the house with her. She
Oh,
basically, we flew her out for Christmas, the baby's first Christmas, and she couldn't even enjoy it because she was so caught up in the fact that her mom wasn't there.
yeah.
It was hard.
Yeah.
It was very, very hard. And so by that next, just before our first wedding anniversary, his mom lost her will to live.
Mm.
And she had a, rare brain disorder,
Mm.
and she died suddenly. She went into the hospital. They tried to relieve the pressure on her brain. He flew out there immediately. He stayed there and to see if she was going to recover. She never recovered, and she passed away. So
But he was there.
he was there to
Oh,
hold her
okay.
hand while
Oh,
she,
ooh,
he didn't have to pull the plug. She
just
went on her
pass
own,
well,
and
as naturally as
yeah, it was
possible.
just
Yeah.
as naturally as
Ooh,
possible.
I'm so sorry to
And
hear.
he wasn't prepared. We weren't prepared. We had no idea that that was going to happen. So at this point, we had just been married a year, and he lost his support system, his mother and his grandmother. 4 months after that, he lost the third, his his aunt, who was the
Oh,
last
of the
best,
trifecta
yeah,
of
the trifecta of the women that
yeah.
raised him and turned him into, the amazing man that I fell in love with.
Yes.
After that happened, he just wasn't himself.
Yeah.
He didn't believe in getting help, going to grief therapy, or
Mm-hmm.
going, to a group or anything like that.
Anything. Yeah.
He started first. It started with binge eating, and then it started with he was withdrawing from
Behavior was
myself and the
changing.
and the family. And I tried my hardest to just be whatever he needed, whatever he needed. But it was difficult. It was difficult because he was getting more and more depressed. And his at this point, we are, still have the one child.
Yes.
We're okay, and we decide that we want to have another baby. So we have another child. And I still notice there's a lot of anger, like you just talked about earlier. The stages of grief, there are no rules. You could be at one stage right away, and then
For
have no stages,
yeah.
and then 3 years later all of it comes out.
Exactly.
And I think that the anger stages happened when he was storing his mother's things where she lived,
Oh, okay.
and they had to go and get them and bring them back to our house. And so when they brought had to do all the, we had to do it once for his grandmother, then for his mom, and then for his aunt. And he was storing it in the Midwest, and they were like, you need to come and get it because they're
Yes.
storing it at a family's house.
Yep.
So when all that stuff showed up, the stages of grief started again.
Yes. Yeah.
He and his brother tried to go through those things, and it just brought up more and more and more of the grief, to the point where he was very, angry and distracted, didn't want to be involved with the family as much. There was a lot of, you know, resentment on my part because I
Mm.
just was too afraid to speak up because he was so very angry.
Yeah.
And the anger and the depression and all those things were very um, all consuming. I I was dancing around like a puppet, doing anything and everything to try to make him happy because I didn't know at the time that I can only make myself happy. I'm only responsible for 50% of the happiness in
Yes.
this relationship. You have to come up with the rest. So I'm doing everything I can to try to bridge the gap.
Yes. So it's clear that you were trying to make it work.
I
But
was.
what happened? At what point did you decide you had enough?
There was a point where he started to blame the kids and I for all of his failures, that we were a distraction, and that he would come in the house. He would go and watch a Laker game. He wouldn't want to be bothered. He's just sitting on the couch. Like, why can't the kids sit here or play on the floor? They're not a distraction. While I try to do something else because I've been with them all day. Like, let's try to be equally yoked here in this relationship. I think he was so angry and screaming at me all the time. And there was this one point I will never forget. We were at the funeral for my son's basketball coach, and he was a very well-loved individual. The boys had played basketball with him, and I was there with the girlfriend, and the boys wanted to say goodbye, and the boys were gonna do like a little basketball thing for them, and then they had to go on to basketball game, and I stepped inside because they were having it at a big school, and we were running a little late. The ceremony was running over, but we wanted to see this little montage because we wanted to see the pictures and things like that. And like, if we were a little late to the game, they're only 6, 7. It's fine.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get my girlfriend, like, come on, we probably need to go right now. And I step out of the gym, and across the way is James, and he's holding our daughter, and he starts screaming at me from like 200 yards, like cussing at me, screaming at me. You left me alone here babysitting her, again, babysitting his own child, and you don't, we need to go. And it was so very, very embarrassing, and so, disrespectful.
Yeah.
And hurtful.
Yes.
Because there were a bunch of people that knew us out there. It was really embarrassing.
He snapped.
And my girlfriend saw it, and she was like, whoa, I've never seen James like that before, because we were known as like the couple that people wanted to be around and hang out. All the parties were, and wanted to be like, they wanted to hang out at our house, come to our parties. We were a great couple. I was very, very, very happy with him for a very, very long time. But I started to I was getting belittled. I was being controlled. I was being manipulated. I was being disrespected. And I was just trying to be what he needed to be without any regard for what I wanted. And not that I didn't lash out, not that I didn't,
stand your ground.
Not even stand my ground, just sometimes was petty.
Yeah.
I was young. I didn't really know how to address that in an adult way. I was just a little too young to take it all in. After that happened, his brother showed up at the game, and I was standing in the middle of a field at, a park in Studio City. And I was just pacing in a circle, and he and his brother approached me, and they thought it was funny. They were laughing at me, and I looked at them both and said, if he does that to me again, he is going to be living with you. I'm not going to continue to be disrespected and put down in that way anymore. I don't deserve that.
Well, especially just like the early years of a marriage.
Yeah,
it's your foundation.
It was early.
Yeah.
It was early. And I had mentioned to them both that they needed to go to therapy. They didn't believe in therapy. But it was very obvious because they had all these boxes of the women that raised them in our garage, and they wouldn't open them. They wouldn't touch them. Yeah. They wouldn't let anybody touch them.